Survivor's ready.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now would be the time to do so.
The queen stays queen.
You said Russell Feathers.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
We have ripe bananas all the time.
Dude, my prize isn't even $1 million. My prize was that I fell in love in this game. Love at first sight. Her name is Candace.
You officially go down as the dumbest survivor ever.
Welcome to Not Game, All Personal. Hey, we are a Survivor podcast here to talk about all things Survivor, more specifically the events of this past week. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Tony, we're merged. We did it.
Nathan, we're merged.
We're
How does it
merged.
feel?
It feels great. You know, the first thing I like to do when I merge is split off into two teams. It's my favorite
Immediately.
thing. My favorite thing about everyone being on one tribe.
But
Love
hey,
it.
now you get to not complain about anything for the rest of the season, right?
It's true, and I'm not complaining
We're
about it
past the
now,
tough part.
okay? Because
No,
I've
I know,
complained
I know.
about it for the past 3-4 seasons. I don't think they've done it all of the 40s. I feel
No.
like they've slowly morphed into this, but at least for the past, I want to say like 3 seasons now, we're kind of in the groove of it, where the contestants aren't even surprised at this point when Jeff says it.
No, and I think like the first couple times even, we probably weren't even that upset about it. It's the fact that it's become like the standard thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more annoying than anything else.
The standard thing, and like we kind of elaborated a lot last week, I think because it's so predictable by the contestants, they have all prepared for it and they play accordingly, which leads to boring and not exciting gameplay. And we find ourselves once again in a position where I feel how you felt last week, this episode, where I'm like, okay, I actually really liked last night's episode and I'm really starting to like these players. However, I am so looking forward to next week where we actually get to see everyone play for the first time, and it sucks that it takes this long to actually get the game officially started, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. Like it does. It's frustrating that you have to wait that long to make it happen. But I feel like, I don't know. I enjoyed it. Like you said, I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a good time, and I like the level of chance that it brings to it. Like you just randomly get thrown into these two groups, and like I feel like there is a level of like luck in Survivor, and this shows us that it's not just skill. Do I think that Tim or Soda were gonna win the game if it weren't for this? Not necessarily, but I think there are people who had that potential who have been screwed over by whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that probably is what determines your view of this twist is does it screw over one of your favorites? And I don't think either of us were riding hard for Tim or Soda, so it's like,
Nope.
okay, that's a fine little buffer, you know. It was gonna happen to both of them, but I think, like, again, if one of our favorites went home, like if it would have been the more obvious one, which would be, I think, Venus and Hunter probably, like those two going home last night, I would have a much different reaction to this twist.
Yeah. And I think those are two people that people have kind of rallied around and enjoy. I mean, some people hate Venus, but some people I think really do enjoy her just because she's not falling in line. And she's not like a super like clean cut player. She's kind of sloppy. She's kind of aggressive sometimes, it feels like. And that's fun. That's just fun to watch.
Yeah, once again, I feel like I have the most thoughts on her this week, as I do most episodes of this season. Just so many questions, so many observations. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get super into it, should we talk about before they're split?
Yeah. We can talk about that. The results of last week's vote, where Mariah went out. Vote was thrown on Venus from Charlie. Charlie's explanation, which I thought made perfect sense, like we've talked about how no one did last year, where you have a backup plan because the shot in the dark has worked. So let's prepare for this, people. And then most of the conversation was about that vote where Venus just kind of goes off on Soda and up until Charlie owning up to it, which so many fascinating circumstances that I like, just multiple things where I'm like, wow, I've never seen it play out like this exactly.
No, I've never seen somebody be so confidently wrong, I think. Like usually those
Mhm.
or like going at the person and they're wrong. Maybe I have and maybe I'm just forgetting about it. But yeah, she just was like, Soda, it was you. I know it was you. And Soda's like, certainly wasn't. Like it absolutely was not. And it's very fun to just watch people be so boldly incorrect. Like I think
Mhm.
that's something that people forget. Like it's very funny to see her just be like, no, this is true. Yeah, always a treat.
Yeah. What did you think about Charlie owning up to it, and then in turn, Q not being happy about that? Just two very wild moves for both of them. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Q is just digging himself into a spot where he cannot win the game. Like, cause you can't go into the game and think I am the best at this, and I have to teach people how to be better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a weird thing to do. And maybe
Right.
you could do that. Maybe you could come from that position. Just he doesn't have the tact for it at all. So it just seems like yeah, Charlie did exactly what he should. He's like, "Oh man, you're right. I'm so sorry." And in the back of his head, he's like, "This guy's a problem. I don't want to deal with this guy anymore." Um, Charlie coming out and telling everybody. I think ultimately there's a good chance it was gonna get out anyway, and him telling her it's hard to look at it without viewing the result in mind, and that the result is that Venus seemed to get over it pretty quickly because she's more worried about the other people on Nami as is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it worked out for him just fine, and it was a smart move, and she took it that way. She didn't take it personally or anything because she still just doesn't like Soda and Tevin and the rest of the people on Nami, it feels like.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think him telling her was necessarily a bad thing. I think the timing, like maybe you wait a bit more, but I guess waiting to tell someone that information has also backfired in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think the only other result is just like see if you can hide it, which I don't know how many people he told beforehand that was going to be the plan. So I think that's the bigger question because if this was just a rogue move just for safety, I think you theoretically could keep that to yourself for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. But yeah, I think there's just too many variables of like if other people knew.
Do you think him telling her in front of the entire group, do you think that was a valuable thing, or do you think that's something where you would want to pull them to the side?
I feel like I would pull them to the side just because I think when you're talking one on one, you have much more control over how they take the news. But like if it's, person number 5 and 6 that are overhearing this, you have no idea how they're gonna interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
Like could they be interpreting it as like, oh, he's really trying for jury management? They could interpret it as, oh wow, he's thinking very strategically about numbers and votes, which you should, but like that
Yeah.
that is something that could be used against him, where it's like, hey, remember that one time that Charlie was like, oh, he's a mastermind when it comes to counting where votes are gonna go. Like stupid, but that is, so I think like that's the risk I always think of when you're having these big group conversations and offer information to like a crowd.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I didn't consider the fact that like it does show that you're strategic, but he did mention at Tribal that he knew his name was out there. And so there's a part of me that thinks that maybe that gives him a little bit more leeway, knowing that he was personally in trouble. He's not just somewhat like Maria or something, just like throwing out a rogue vote just to mess with everybody. It was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in trouble, so I'm gonna make sure I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it shows some like honesty, and I wonder if that's a valuable thing to the rest of the group. Yeah, but it's one of those things you
Yeah.
just don't know how it will be received, and I think it is a big risk. I think you're right with that.
Yeah, and obviously it wasn't received well by Q, which I think is the bigger lesson of this. Which does
Buddy, I
that
could not
matter?
care
I
less
don't
what Q
know.
thinks. I mean, he has sway, but you just have to hope that you don't become his target before everybody finally turns on him. I think I would put money on him getting voted out if he doesn't win immunity next week. Genuinely.
Yes, but I think here's my larger point with like the format and how I think it's frustrating we haven't seen them all fully play yet is because we don't know if Q is actually running the show as of right now. Last week he was safe. So there was absolutely no fallback from anything he was saying last week as far as strategy goes. This week, he essentially was safe with the way the team's divided up, where he does have the 3 Yanu still together. But it's like, are they 3 Yanu? We don't know, because, again, Kenzie has been safe for the past 2 weeks. So it's like, it's so hard to actually get a read on his position in the game because it hasn't been like an honest, open-ended, like anyone's up for grabs yet.
Yeah, I think it's fair. You don't really get. You're just playing. You're just hoping that you make it through. You're like making the right move or the easy, safe, which it feels like that's what they're doing, but that definitely doesn't feel like what they did in this episode. Like, they made moves. Are they going for the Hail Mary yet? Are they going for the big stuff? Not necessarily. But they took care of people who I think could have been a problem later on. So it's not like they're just. It wasn't a week that was wasted on. And no offense, of course, like Liz or something, who just seems to kind of be there and doesn't seem to be doing a ton.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. I just think there are more questions about players than there are, like, and I think that results in having them vulnerable. Like, we haven't seen Q have to scramble. We haven't seen, and I think it's mostly the Yanu 3 now that I'm looking at it. Because I think, like, you know, Charlie and Maria was safe this week, but, like, last week they were a little bit in the hot seat being, you know, vulnerable. Charlie, 2 weeks in a row now, we've seen what he's like in those situations. Ben, we've seen what he's like in those situations. Most of Yanu, you know, we saw a little bit from Hunter, even though he wasn't really in danger this week. So it's mostly the Yanu that I have questions about, because back-to-back weeks, they all got fortunate enough to be placed together, so they do operate as this voting block. So could Siga and Nami eventually pick them off? We don't know, because it's been 2 weeks of them having safety.
We've said for like a couple seasons now, like, that's what you want to be. Is you almost want to go in down in numbers like that. Like, that is genuinely the best position to be in the game. And so I think no matter how it was going to be split, I wonder if those 3 would have been targeted at all, or because it's so focused around Siga versus Nami more than anything else right now.
Right.
Because that's just how it works. So, yeah, but I definitely see what you are saying.
Yeah, well, let's talk about let's talk about the actual teams then. The challenge itself, the challenge was bizarre. Just the vibe of it, the humor that was going around. It was very casual and I don't know. I'm just like, what? When I was watching it, I was like, I've never seen a challenge feel this way, if that makes sense.
I think they tried so hard to make it contrast so much to last season. They're having so much fun, they're just joking around while they sit there.
Yeah.
But to be fair, that just watching him stand there isn't the most interesting stuff in the world, and it was pretty calm, so they kind of had to do it that way to make it last, I think.
Yeah, and I also think this is probably another result of, like, having the longer episodes where the challenges are going to take up more of that time. But I mean, yeah, it's no complaints, but it was just a lot of goofing off and a lot of apparently Q throwing. You want to talk about that? Do you think he actually threw the competition?
I think he thinks he threw the competition.
I have so much thoughts on Q. I'm saving a
realistically,
lot of them, but...
like him looking at the tribe that, or the not tribe, the split like half that he was on, he's got to feel good going into that vote, no matter what. You know what I mean? And so I could see him being like, oh yeah, I don't need to win this and no reason to raise my threat level. Because I think he does have a mind for the game. He's a little overconfident probably and not the most subtle or smooth player, but I think he does knows what he's doing a little bit. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that, especially when people are worried about physical threats and he knows that.
Yes. I think here's my biggest take on him from this episode. I think that paired with him just having no concern about Hunter at all. And I think we've seen this when Yanu was losing so much and he almost quit the game based on him not performing the way he's supposed to. I just think he gives himself like so much pressure and he thinks so highly of himself when it comes to challenges where like people are pointing out like, oh, Hunter's the best. And Q's like, no, he's not that good. I could, like I feel like there's some of this. He believes that he could beat Hunter in these competitions. So that's why he's not as concerned as these other people are, where they're like, guys, he's outnumbered right now. He's the only Nami here. he's gonna beat us in the individual. And Q's like, no, I don't think he will. I think no, don't worry about him. We can handle him. So I don't know how accurate that is, but I just feel like that's kind of how Q carries himself, where he thinks he is the best player, and it's like, no, dude, Hunter is right here, and I'm sorry, but I don't think you would stand a chance at most of these.
If anyone could give him a run for his money, like physically in a physical type challenge, I think it's probably Q. But the puzzle aspect and just how strong Hunter is in that kind of arena, and how much of the rest of the season will be that, I just don't see. Yeah, I don't. I think it's a lot of overconfidence, and he probably will win an immunity or two. Like, I don't think Hunter is about to run the table. That's just unrealistic to expect.
Right.
But yeah, maybe you don't have that much confidence in yourself, my man.
Yeah, I've just never seen anyone diminish the physical threat so fast like he did. As if, like, Tim didn't have a valid point that Hunter's a physical threat. It was like, okay, you can disagree with that and not want to, but, like, you have to at least acknowledge that Tim is correct in saying that, yes, Hunter is good at these things.
Yeah, I also think Tim it was just such an interesting move to have an alliance and then, like, just almost immediate. I guess it's been a couple episodes for sure, a little while, but to so quickly be like, hey, we were gonna ride us 6 to the end and then fight it out, but I want to get out one of the people right now. Outrageous move. And to do it with Q, who, if you have any sort of, like, just knowing people, he's not going to go for that. Like, that he's all in on this 6-person alliance. And so he should have known the audience and just been happy with whatever else they were going to do. Like, you can't try to make that move at that point. I thought that was quite foolish.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's more just, like, sucks for Tim's position because, like, I know he says Maria's his number one, but, like, we have definitely seen him and Ben very close as well. So it is, I think, he just goes by his default where it's like, yes, I know there's 6-person alliance, but, like, these, like, the 4 of Sega right now, like, I've actually been close with them for longer than you guys. You know? So it's like, I think his reads weren't incorrect, where I think if he wanted to go far, he should probably stick with Ben. I just think he didn't go about it the right way. And what's his way out of it? I don't know, because he didn't have an idol. He didn't have, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't really have any moves to pull any sort of blindside. But I do think that, like, just openly admitting to Q, it's like, oh no, this alliance, I'm actually more loyal to my old tribe. I think that was 100% the incorrect move.
And I'm, as you know, of the camp, like, losing a close ally, kind of what you want in this situation, because then you're less of a threat. When people think that, like, him and Ben are the only duo, I don't know. I would almost want to just, like, sacrifice him at that point. Just be like, you know what? Let's just get rid of him now.
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's just I think the question is, does he think that his relationship with Maria, and then also these 4 people he just met a couple days earlier, are those people the ones that are going to keep him to the end? But again, like, I don't think he had a choice. Like, I don't think he had any wiggle room to save Ben. I think the only way that something could have happened, because I've been thinking through this, I think if he can somehow get to Hunter before the 3 of them can. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the pull is, what the draw is for Hunter, because then you're also trying to convince Hunter, hey, let's turn on our alliance, because you'd have to go for Q or Tiffany. But I think that's the only way, and it just didn't seem like he even tried, or at least we saw no conversation with Ben and Tim trying to get Hunter. It's like they pretty much admitted defeat and said, yep, one of us is going home.
Yeah, that's a great point, because honestly, I think Q's rubbing everybody the wrong way. So if you go to Hunter and to Kenzie and say, hey, let's take a shot at Q, I think that's so much more viable than trying to get Q to turn on Hunter. Because Hunter wants to survive, Hunter wants to play the game, and he knows how to play the game, and has a lot more tact. I think he would be in for that sort of thing to ensure his safety and be in on the plan. Q wouldn't see it coming because he's just so overconfident. Yeah, the only thing is that's kind of a big move, and then he's the target next week because he made a big move, and that's Modern Survivor.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm trying to think what else about this tribe that was interesting. I think that the Q dynamics was definitely the biggest one, which
Mm-hmm.
we saw some conversations with Tiffany and Kenzie that they are onto him, and I am so excited to see how their whole dynamic ends up, because I think up until the merge, the storyline was definitely Q trying to get rid of Kenzie at some point for the sake of
Mm-hmm.
getting Tiffany to be his number one, and Tiffany seemed to be like mostly on board with it. Although now in hindsight, I would be curious watching back, like how much was she just saying what Q wanted to hear, because the past two episodes it feels like her and Kenzie are much closer than Q thinks they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm down for that blind side if that eventually happens.
I don't see a world where him getting voted out isn't just the biggest blindside we've ever seen, and he's just stunned because he's so incredibly overconfident that I can't see it any other way. And I would love if those two did that to him. Like, it would just be very, very fun for me.
It feels a lot like Drew from last season. Not in this like their gameplay necessarily, but just in that level of yeah, I agree. Like there's no way he's gonna go out and see it coming. I think anything
Mhm.
even if it is just the most obvious thing ever, even if people are warning him, even if I just don't think he's ever gonna think it's possible.
No, I don't think he thinks Tiffany would ever turn on him, and that I think that's going to be his downfall. Is that she certainly will.
Yeah, I agree. Here's
I think
my
one thing,
no, you go.
one quick thing that I've noticed that has definitely been a lot of other seasons and something that I've seen before, but I think I'm just recognizing as like something I do really enjoy. And it's something that you're saying is kind of frustrating that we have this delayed sense of like when when are they actually going to have to draw lines in the sand? But for some reason this season I'm really really enjoying that tension of not knowing, all right, who's Maria really going to go to when push comes to shove? Who's Q really going to who's Tiffany really going to rely on? Who's Kenzie really going to rely on? Who are these people really going to ride for and fight for when it really comes down to it? And we found out this week for Tim, it was Ben. He was really fighting for Ben. Ben was the guy he wanted to work with. There's something about that tension and not knowing that like makes me excited to see what happens next and excited to see them reveal what direction they're going to go. And even with Maria, we know that it's a question. We know that she's like, I don't know, this is an option, but this is an option, and we don't like that's a fun place to live in, I think, overall.
That's an interesting point. I haven't really thought about it like that. I think I would wonder, because I think the alternative to that is what you're saying, is that the tension would, or at least the proposal I'm saying is the tension would have been let up already, or at least we would have some more answers. But I wonder if that does happen, like my way. Let's say some of these answers are resolved 3 episodes ago. Would new questions come up or new tensions build? You know, because I think, to me, I view it as like a lot of these are day one tensions, right? Like the Venus soda, the Q trying to get Kenzie out, all these things, like they've been the same storylines that we've seen for episodes now. So I think like it's just a matter of perspective, because like yes, the tension is building, but I think I would argue that we've seen seasons where that tension breaks, but then new tension comes up. And I wonder if this format only allows a couple different storylines to actually progress because of that.
That's a good point. I think last season is kind of an example of that, where even as the season went on, you had like Katura and some of these people where you didn't know who they were really fully aligned with and who they were really gonna vote with and ride with it towards the end. And obviously you had but then you have kind of that contrast of you have that solid 4 who for so long were solid. And so I don't know. I think there's also older seasons where it sticks so much to tribe lines or it's so set in stone what the alliances are that it kind of gets boring towards the end. And I would prefer the tension. So if this delays the tension and makes it stretch a little bit to make it more interesting and more unsure of what's going to happen, I kind of like that. I also think it might just be editing in more recent seasons where they know, like the producers very much know, all right, this person is 100% with this person, but they're
Really?
just not showing us.
You think they do? You think they know?
1 million. Well, sometimes. I think there are times where people don't know for sure what they're going to do. I
Sure.
think the smart players don't 100% like, I'm doing this no matter what, which is kind of where Tim made the mistake, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean honestly this whole show is just how they present it to us. And I would say like I
Mhm.
think like last season you brought up like Katura. I would say that's a very interesting example because I think what was like the one thing we know about her? It was her and Bruce. And it was like this
Mhm.
tension, and we never saw anything happen with it because it's exactly what I'm describing where it was okay, I forget what the options were, but for like these two half merge, fully merge, split up into two teams, like the two of them were separate. So it was this tension where they never went to tribal pre-merge, they never could vote for each other,
Mhm.
and yet somehow that tension was like it was never fulfilled because Bruce kind of went out and Katura didn't even really seem to have that much to do with it. So I thought that was like very fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think like what you're saying only works if the tension actually pays off.
Mhm.
And I think perhaps the producers are editing the show in a way to give us this big buildup so that we tune in next week to see like, oh my gosh, is this the week that, Q finally gets Kenzie out? Is this the week that like I don't know, Venus actually blows up the tribe and they finally get rid of her? Like, I think that's what they're trying to do. I just hope it pays off, I guess.
I think it's one of those things that sometimes you want it to pay off and sometimes you don't want it to pay off. It's like you don't want every season to be incredible because you want some like you almost want bad seasons to make the good ones feel even sweeter kind of thing. Um I don't know if that's a good way to put it or if that's even true necessarily. But I also thought of Gabler versus Ellie while you were talking of an example of one that absolutely paid off.
Yeah,
Great
it did.
winner.
But I would say that paid off immediately. I mean, that
Yeah,
was the
it
first,
paid off
and
very
then
early.
we got to see new things build up. So like
Hmm.
I just don't know if holding off on some of these things means that it's going to be bigger and better. I think sometimes letting it happen, like if we were to actually have everyone vote together last week and this week, I think some of those would have been resolved, but then new things would have built naturally. But maybe not.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Fair. Yeah, I would say early, like a lot of early Survivor, the tension kind of disappeared towards the end, and I would say more recent Survivor that hasn't been true.
Yeah.
Do I feel that way?
That's it.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking in such broad strokes that it's hard to really confidently say that.
We'd have to really crunch the
'Cause I'm
numbers and
saying
see.
older Survivor meaning the previous 40 seasons, more modern Survivor being like, and maybe that's not even where the line would be, but
We should at some
should we
point,
get
not
into?
not now, but at some point have a good conversation about like what eras there actually are because Jeff claims it's just pre-40 and then 40 on. And like, no, dude, there's like 5 or 6 eras in the first 40.
Mhm.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Last thing about this team, before we get to the other one, I think I'm ready for a hot take. I think I smell winter vibes with Kenzie. I
I do too a
don't.
little bit.
I
I saw it, like last week. I was like, "There's something there."
well,
I could
I
see
said it first.
and
I said it
could see
first. So
being-
this
you
is
did say
my.
it first. You did say it first.
I don't even know if I'm fully committed to it because I'm not saying she's gonna win, but I think this episode I finally was like, I really underestimated her up until this point, and in hindsight, I'm going back and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, why are we not? I just kind of assumed no one on that tribe was like gonna go the distance, and now that I'm like, okay, they're in this and they're still strong, and unfortunately for Tiffany, just not enough screen time to like give me any sort of hope that she has what we like to call the edit that we don't talk about. And Q obviously,
We've never talked about edits.
but Kenzie, I'm like, oh my gosh, why? So I think what I'm trying to say is my prediction is I will not be shocked if she wins the game.
No, certainly not. And especially if I had to pick one from those three, it would be her.
100%.
That's a fun
100%.
game. Pick one person from each original tribe.
Oh, I mean, that's easy. I would say Maria, to me, is the obvious one.
Yep.
from Siga.
Charlie has something.
Here's my prediction, okay? I think Charlie and Venus. I think I'm about to predict the finale. I think Charlie and
goodness.
Venus are gonna make Final Tribal, but I don't think they're gonna win.
Yeah, you think they're getting that?
I think Venus is 100% making Final Tribal.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see she would absolutely be a final tribal loser. Absolutely. I can see that.
Yep, so that's my prediction. I think Charlie similar because I don't see the winner in him yet, but I think if it's him and Maria at the end, I think Maria takes it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
But then I'm like, am I also saying then Kenzie? So is my prediction that Charlie, Kenzie, and Venus are the final three? Because I don't know about that either. I think, okay, here's my prediction. Bold prediction. I'm just putting it out there. Kenzie wins the game. Venus is sitting next to her. Probably 0 votes. Charlie beats Maria in fire.
Ooh.
That's how Maria goes.
Interesting.
Final boss.
Interesting. I like that ending 4, which means it's not going to happen. And I don't see a world where Liz is taken out before Final 3. I hate to tell you.
You think Liz is going to go all the way?
I think there's a good chance. There's always the like one, and no offense, of course, but like who doesn't belong here? And she might do some cool stuff coming up. There's obviously doors open for that.
Yeah, I think the problem with my theory is there's so many heavy hitters that had to go before that because it's like, how does Tevin and Hunter get out? You know, how
I
does...
have an idea of how Tevin gets out.
Okay, let's talk about this team. Because this team is also just chaotic and messy, and somehow resulted in Venus getting all the credit and Tevin being so disappointed that she gets the credit, which is one of the funniest 10 seconds I think I've ever seen on the show, where he's just, no, what did I do? What have I done? Loved
And he
it.
also he didn't vote for her. He
Right.
can't even say I voted for Soda. He didn't. And so he can't even he can be like, "Oh no, I planned that." And everybody will be like, "No, you didn't. Like, that's not true." And he's like, "No, I did, I swear." And it's like, "Nah," and just gaslight the mess out of him, and he's done. Like he's gonna be so upset. I honestly think him trying to claim credit is going to be his downfall in like next episode. I think there's a chance.
Yeah, no, I could see that. We are assuming that him voting for Venus though was strategic as a backup plan, right? Like split the
I would
vote.
assume so.
Okay,
Or
that's
it
what I
was-
thought too.
He knew that Soda was going to be jury, and he was already playing for the jury. I think there's a chance that's possible too.
It's possible. I don't know if he would have had the same reaction of like disappointed that he didn't get the credit. Maybe, I don't know.
True.
Because I think
don't
the
think-
only other option is that he wanted Venus out, and then Liz swapped or she flipped, which that's not the case, right?
No, I think it's not super common that after somebody's voted out, somebody is immediately given all the credit right there. So that's kind of a new to be like, was this you? And Venus to be like, yup, it was me. It doesn't happen every time. So maybe he thought he could get away with it, and people knowing that he told them to vote for her, that would be enough.
Yeah, perhaps. Other way, good resume for Venus, I guess.
Honestly,
She needs
hopefully
it.
she doesn't go back to camp and start claiming credit for it. Who did that?
I honestly was a little surprised at Soda's reaction. And I think maybe that's just the fault of like the season where it's like we got nothing on Soda this season. Like we really didn't. You know, the
No.
only thing we saw really was how most people were annoyed by her for one reason or another. But like her and Venus's relationship was just so bizarre and so just like we don't like each other, but we're not like really targeting each other yet. And I don't even think that like Venus was I don't know if she would definitely go for Soda in this situation. You know, it was kind of like, oh, I guess Soda's the plan now. That works for me, but like I don't know if that would have been her first plan. So it's just so bizarre how their relationship ended up, and so surprising that Soda was just like, "Oh, you got me. That was awesome." I was like, "Wait, what? This is your reaction
Yeah.
right now?"
Well, I thought Venus, I think, pushed for Tevin at first, and then she's like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen," and so she went Soda. I think it's one of those like, you get stuck on a deserted island with someone, and you like, yeah, get annoyed with things that they do. That doesn't mean you don't like the person. But when you
Mhm.
spend 14 days straight with somebody, I can imagine that getting kind of annoying. So I think it was just one of those, and they'd like genuinely like each other. Tevin was the one that just despises Venus for some reason. I don't think so. I think that, yeah, there was definitely something between the two of them, but I think they'll get over it. They'll be
Yeah,
besties at the watch party.
I'm very curious how, like, because again, Liz, we're not really getting anything about Liz other than she's just didn't bring it back to tribal, which is
Mm-hmm.
bold strategy, bold
Winner
social
edit. Not that
play.
we talk about edits, but winner edit.
That is not a winner edit. You're
That's
crazy.
that's so confident, dude. She just knew.
she's like, I'm not gonna vote the rest of the season because I know I'm gonna win. She throws every immunity challenge. But I would love to hear her opinion on Venus, as well as a little more from Hunter. I know like Hunter has had
Mhm.
thoughts, but like it has been mostly Tevin, and then mostly like other people now from other tribes that are picking up on it. So like I'm so fascinated. Like, how long does she need to survive until people no longer have the original problem with her? I think people have new problems with her all the time. You know, her and Maria kind
Mhm.
of went back and forth this episode, but I don't know. It just feels like Tevin is her last like main foe here, and then people might forget about her.
Yeah, I hope not. I really hope not, but but it's possible.
Yeah, I am continued to be fascinated by how she is pretty much the star of the Nami tribe from the episode like the editing
Mhm.
perspective. And I can't figure out what it means because like you watch her play and you watch her try to convince people and nothing works, but yet like her social play seems to be so bad that people are so onto it. Like, oh my gosh, she's so bad. Why is she doing this? But she's a threat. So it's like, wait, so you're saying she's bad at the game, you're saying she's a threat, and yet we're seeing more of her than all the other Nami combined. What is the final outcome for this girl?
But at the same time, her being so bad, like they know that she's doing things that makes her a threat, but she's so out with it and like so bad at it that it's making her less of a threat. So it's very interesting where like it should be making her more of a threat. It's absolutely not because everybody's like, no, she's just not good at the game. And if she just makes the right move and it works at the right time, that could be a win, honestly.
Well, in one of the few insights we got from Liz this episode is her talking to Tevin, and Liz pretty much said what I've said multiple times over the course of this podcast, where it's like you have the enemy, the obvious enemy that everyone knows is an
Mhm.
enemy, or you have the one that could be potentially an enemy, which was Soda in this situation. So I'm like, yeah, that is the line of thinking I always bring up, where it's like it's not bad to have a known enemy here because, especially one who doesn't have any power or pull or sway with anyone, you know.
Mhm.
So I think it made sense. But my question is, do you think that like Soda was actually the move, especially for Tevin and Liz? Because I think maybe just like the lack of screen presence we got from her, I wasn't fully convinced that she was as big of a threat to their game as they were saying she was.
I definitely see what you're saying. I don't know that Tevin has that great of a read of the game overall. Like he
Sure.
acts like he does, and he has like this very outward personality. To be fair, this is the first time that we've seen him vulnerable, so this is the first time we've really seen him actually have to play somewhat.
Yeah.
But is she the move for them at that point? I mean, you could have taken Soda out later for sure, and she was riding with you for sure. I don't know. It's a close ally who isn't a challenge threat who you could take out at any time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird time to take that shot.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's the thing I'm stuck on is like, did we get any insight that she was going to be working against them? In my mind, she was going to be a number. Who else does she have? Has she made connections with people on other tribes? Like, none of it really added up to me, especially when, again, you have Charlie sitting right there. I would just assume keeping both Venus and Soda would be better for your numbers game that you're playing.
There is something to, because if they get rid of 2 Siga people, which they were close to doing, then Nami is the clear power that's left. Then I think Yanu and Siga have to team up to take a shot at Nami. Even though Nami is super split and people are like, they're obviously don't want to work together, they're obviously making moves together and they have a reason to stick together because they have the most of any single tribe left. And so there might have been something where we have to take a shot from within just to make sure that threat level doesn't get too high. But Soda being the one is interesting. Yeah, now that I say all of that, Venus was right there, and they went with Soda. So that's a move.
Yeah, I guess because you could look at it as like next week, if that does happen, you would walk in with a 5-5, assuming that Yanu and Siga would be teaming up together. But you would also have that alliance with Q and all of them, which you could maybe try to pull, say like, hey, remember what we said? Like that could be something. But then you also have Tevin's extra vote, which could break that 5-5 tie. But I think it all comes down to trusting that Venus would vote with that Nami 5, which maybe that's more of it. It's like, hey, we know that she's not going to vote with us long term, so we can't plan on being this large majority alliance counting on her vote, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that Tevin, that makes him, because Tevin, I feel like, was the driving force of this. I think it makes him less threatening, because Soda was seen as one of his close allies, and he's also close with Hunter. Like I think he's so outspoken about Venus, just so everybody doesn't think everybody loves him. Like everybody knows that he has an enemy. Maybe, and this might be me speaking strategy into existence that wasn't there. But getting rid of Soda is also taking a shot at himself, so he lessens his threat level a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad move, especially because knowing that, okay, once I get Hunter back with me, we'll be a little bit better. And again, they didn't really touch any of those numbers from the Journey Alliance. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That's now 5. I think
stop believing, man.
My biggest question is, do you think Maria has any connection still with those people without Tim?
No, but Maria seems like a good enough player that if they still include her, she will still be a part of those conversations until she has to draw a line in the sand.
Do you think she like initiates it, like once they're all back together and be like, hey, I saw you guys voted out Tim, but hey, Q, Tiffany, are we still on? Or do you think she just has to wait until they approach her and assume that they're working against her?
I think that wait for them to talk to you, because if they want to work with her, they will come to her because they voted out her connection to the tribe. So yeah, she should not go up and be like, we still good? No, I don't. If they don't come to you, then you're not good, and you just gotta play that way.
Yeah, I'm just very curious because I think like the Siga dynamic is what I'm most interested. I'm interested in, what am I saying? A lot of things. I think number one, Yanu, I want to see them vulnerable, like all of them vulnerable, and have to see like them actually try to scramble and come up with something when they're not safe. And I want to see what happens with Siga. Is Ben close enough to both Charlie and Maria? And do Charlie and Maria think that Ben is, like, how do they come back and Ben be like, hey, they voted out one of our numbers. Here's what happens. It was me or him. They all were working against us the whole time. And how do Maria and Charlie, come back from that? So I think that is what I'm very interested in.
Yeah, at that point, they almost have to take up arms against that because Maria knows the 4 people that are in that alliance, and they have the numbers to take a shot with the rest of the people in the tribe. So they could easily start picking off Q or Hunter or any of those people. And so I think that's the move. When you see Tim's gone and they come back and okay, that means Q protected Hunter, then you gotta go against them. And hopefully Kenzie, you can pull her over, but she might be so stuck with the Yanu 3 that she doesn't believe it.
That is interesting. That is a prediction I had originally, is that Maria would be the one to kind of break up this Journey 6. because of her
She was never
being
really a part of it.
well, yeah, and Tim assuming like, oh yeah, we're a duo when she actually has like a real duo that I
Mhm.
think has been proven at this point that they are
Her
tight.
Malcolm.
Her Malcolm.
Yep.
So I think that's probably pretty accurate. I think maybe they try to include her in a vote, be like, hey Maria, this is how we're all voting, and she goes, no. I'm gonna go back with Charlie and Ben right now because I don't know you five, and the person from my original tribe that was in this, you voted out. So I
Mhm.
think that's probably most likely. But I don't know.
Yeah. I think that sounds correct. 100%. All of our predictions are going to come true.
Kenzie winning the whole thing. The
And
more I
also not
say
being in
it,
your final three.
nope. It's worth noting you had another one of your draft picks go out last night. So
Tim?
you're Soda.
I
You
don't know who
you drafted Soda. So this was a good call because actually this was a bad call for me. If we would have only drafted 3, Mariah and Randon were my 4th and 5th pick. So if we would have only drafted 3, you would have had Jem go out weeks ago and me still have all 3. But now that we have 5, we're tied at 3-3, but your average is going to be a little better
the
than
rules,
me.
you can't beat me.
I know. But if my prediction is correct, that means Charlie, Venus, and Maria will be 3 of the final 4, and Kenzie will win, which none of us have. So that, honestly, I think we can agree that my predictions are probably correct based on
We
that.
can't agree to anything if that's what you're coming out with.
All right. Well, we'll see how good how Tevin, Tiffany, and Hunter do for you. We'll see if winner edits on all
Now
of
that you
them.
say it out loud, not a huge fan. Oh gosh.
Three winner edits if I've ever seen them.
Hey, one of them's gonna be the final boss. That's all I know.
One of them's going to be up in a spy shack next week. You see that?
I love it.
All right. Anything else in this episode?
I got nothing.
All right. Cool. Let's wrap it up then. Look forward to next week. Big old 10-person vote. Exciting.
Ooh.
All right, for more episodes, visit notgameallpersonal.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube at NGAPPod. That's at NGAPPod. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, really. I'm Nathan. This is Tony, and we will see you next week.
12 seasons, 2 pals, 1 podcast.